Have you ever walked through a city and thought something is missing? Like, not a shop, not a cafe, just a place is missing. Just where you can breathe, where you can be for a while, just a place to stop. Cities are growing faster than ever, but are they growing any better than, let's say, 100 years ago? Are they more futuristic? That is the problem that urban planners face every day, and that Simon and I try to understand in our studies and be able to fix in the future. But believe me, it is harder than it sounds.
Let's be honest. A lot of public space in modern cities is not that great. It's loud, it's grey, it's dominated by cars and concrete, and for most people, it's just somewhere you pass through, not somewhere you actually want to be. Urban planners call this the problem of dead space. Areas that exist physically but have no real social function. Nobody gathers there, nobody feels welcome. They are technically public, but they don't feel that way. Nobody wants to spend their free time sitting next to a giant parking lot while breathing in car exhaust. And this isn't just about comfort, it's about health, climate, and community. Urban green space reduces heat, filters air, and, perhaps most importantly, gives people a place to connect with each other. Studies consistently show that access to quality public space improves mental health, reduces social isolation, and even increases property values in surrounding areas. This isn't a luxury, it's infrastructure.
So, how do cities actually change? First of all, it takes time, years, 10, 20 years, and policies and planning. But sometimes all of that starts with an idea. And that is where the Otto Linne Award comes in. And shortly now something about Otto Linne. First of all, the Otto Linne Award is an international competition run by Hamburg, and it's named after Otto Linne. And Otto Linne was the first garden director from Hamburg, and he lived from 1869 to 1937. And he was rather radical for that time, and because in his vision, green is not just there to look good. It's not just a decoration. People should use it. People should be able to enjoy their free time there and be able to breathe. Uh, the award invites students from all over the world and young graduates, and there they have the ability to develop a real idea, and it's not just on paper. Some proposal could actually be built sometime. And what makes this development interesting is that it has two stages. The first stage is where all of the teams, 3 or 4 people in one team, make a plan. So they have a first idea and they show it to the jury, and they decide 5 groups, and then they go to the next stage and they speak to citizens and experts, and they then build their next example, and maybe one of them could be built in the future. And something like this is incredibly important for planning, because you have to talk to the people, you have to talk to experts who actually live there, who are actually affected by the changes, and not just look at some graphs.
The current competition, the 2026 edition, focuses on a fascinating area called the Scheißener Feldmark, a roughly 220-hectare agricultural zone on the outskirts of Hamburg in the borough of Eimsbüttel. Now, 220 hectares might not mean much, so to give you a sense of the scale, that's roughly 3 times the size of Hamburg's famous Planten- und Blumenpark. That's large. No, actually a largely agricultural area sitting right on the edge of the built city. And that's exactly what makes it so interesting from an urban planning perspective. It represents a question that more and more cities are having to answer. What do you do with land like this as cities expand and the need for green, more accessible public space grows? The competition asks participants to imagine the space transformed, not just into a park, but into something more complex. A landscape that balances biodiversity, agricultural heritage, everyday recreational use, and climate resilience. This kind of thinking, integrating ecological function with social purpose, is the heart of modern urban planning. It moves away from the old idea of park as simply green area with some benches and trees, and towards something more ambitious. A park that fills rainwater, that supports native species, that has space for children, for elderly people, for cyclists, or for people who just want to sit under a tree and read a book. Which honestly shouldn't sound revolutionary, but in many cities it still is.
So why does it matter? Why do we start changing cities? So cities are not just places or economic systems. They are places where people live, children grow up, and neighborhoods form. So there's also a growing body of research that people who live nearby a green space or a park are more likely to exercise, form neighborhoods in a better way, and report a lower stress level. And you probably heard of the urban heat island effect, which means that the heat heat dimension in cities start getting bigger and bigger. And all that starts because the surfaces, like you see in my background, is mostly asphalt, which absorbs and radiates heat in a more intense way. And Hamburg, as well as a lot of other northern European cities, start to experience that phenomenon. So the only solution that comes to their mind, which is really sensible, is that they have started changing the surfaces, such as adding green spaces or just planting trees in general, to absorb the heat and start cooling down the cities in a more effective and useful way.
Of course, planning and building a city isn't easy. Urban planning always involves competing interests. On one hand, you have the developers who want to build the housing. On the other hand, you have the residents who want something completely different. And then you have the politicians with short electoral cycles. One of those core tensions in projects like the Schnellsener Feldpark is the question on who decides at the end. Traditionally, urban planning has been a top-down process, meaning the experts design and talk about it, and the community has to accept it. But that model is changing. The Otto Linne Awards workshop model is one example of a more participatory approach. While it isn't perfect, it shows a broader shift in how we think about who has the right to shape the public space around us. There's also the question of what happens after a competition like this. The ideas that have been submitted don't automatically become reality. They require political will, funding, and years of planning. Some ideas from past competitions have influenced real projects. Others, most of them, have remained on paper. But that doesn't make these competitions useless. In fact, quite the opposite. These competitions serve a crucial functions. They generate ideas, they train the next generations like Simon and me, and they shift the public conversation about what cities could look like in the future.
So, what can we take from all of this? The Otto Linne Award isn't just a design competition. It's a statement about values, about what we think cities are for. Are cities primarily for economic productivity, for cars, for maximum density, or are they for the people who live in them, such as children, adults, or elderly people? Or are they for connection, for nature, or just for a life that's worth living for? Urban planning has the power to answer all these questions, concretely in physical terms. Every park that has been built or doesn't, every bike lane, every bench that has been built, or every tree that has been planted, all that aren't just minor details. They are active decisions about what kind of society we want to live in. The young planners submitting ideas for the Schelsener Feldmark this year aren't just designing a park. They are designing a new residential area, and in doing so, they are doing something genuinely important. Cities are places where we live. They are places we shape, and places that shape us back. And with that being said, I hope Ben and I could give you a better introduction and insight in the world of urban planners. Thanks for watching.